Welcome to the Kennedy Report. I'm Kennedy Hall. Happy Thanksgiving, United States of America. For me, Thanksgiving is so passé. I'm just kind of joking. We had it last month. That's the reason there. Okay, so we're going to talk about something extremely controversial for YouTube today. So we're going to be very careful with how we use our words. That's the world we live in. I think it's getting better. I see a lot of videos on YouTube that I think would have been taken down about a year ago, but nonetheless, I think I can say what I need to say without risking it. And why get your channel taken down if you don't need to? There's a documentary going around called Died Suddenly, and it's about a certain medication that people have been talking about for a couple of years. One that many people did not want to take, but were coerced into taking. A medication that many people have problems with because they think it's really dangerous. You probably know what I'm talking about. It has something to do with that reason why everyone was told to wear masks for a year and a half. Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is the jab. And don't worry, YouTube, we're not saying one way or the other whether or not we think that you should or should not partake in whatever medicine that your government is or is not trying to make you take against your will. Fair enough? Everyone follow me there? Before we get to that, though, we need to say thank you to our sponsors over at Noble Gold. And in all honesty, we couldn't keep this going without the sponsorships that we have. It's remarkable the support that they give us. So thank you to Noble Gold. But first, we've got to say thank you to our sponsors over at Noble Gold. So, is investing in silver today a good idea? Colin Plume from our friends at Noble Gold thinks so. On the national desk, he explained there had been huge sell-offs of silver because of its low price right now. Silver is the most useful industrial metal out there, and demand is soaring for electronics and electric cars and solar panel circuits as the green agenda speeds up. Make sure you use your paper straws, everybody. As industries pick up after the pandemic supply chain issues, the trend down could reverse quickly and silver will skyrocket. Don't miss this. Give the team at Noble Gold a call right now and join thousands of others who have taken advantage of this blip in the market. They'll guide you through the process and make it easy for you. And this month you'll get a stunning free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with a qualified IRA of $20,000 or higher. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold, the safest place to put your money right now. Call the team now at 1-877-646-5347 to find out more, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. As I've said many times before, I'm not an economist, but I am a little bit of an amateur historian. And markets kind of come and go in some ways, but those precious metals always remain. All right, so thank you to Noble Gold, our sponsor. Thanks again. Check the links in the description for the information that you need in order to do so. Okay, so this documentary is going around called Died Suddenly. And the thesis of the documentary is essentially that this medication that will not be named for reasons of YouTube is causing people to have certain problems. It goes deeply into potential side effects. It goes into issues with things that are allegedly being found in deceased people and so on and so forth. Again, go watch it yourself if you want to know more. It is something that is difficult to talk about on YouTube. We can't really talk about it on YouTube. I don't think to the degree that I would like to be able to. Maybe that will continue to change. Personally, I think, although I don't think that we need to get on the bandwagon that Elon Musk is the savior of the universe, he's not. And in fact, Elon Musk actually has a lot of antichrist characteristics about him, which will tie into our topic here with the mark of the beast. But in any case, I do think that his push to get Twitter, I mean, he's now going to be reinstating all of the accounts unless they broke some sort of law, which is reasonable. I mean, you don't want to have people breaking criminal laws on your platform. That's not a good look. But basically, anyone who didn't break a law or hadn't been banned for some sort of crazy harassment spam or something, they're going to be allowed back on. And that includes all the people with unacceptable views about the old Rona monster and stuff. So I personally think Twitter's push towards a open market of speech and so on and so forth will force outlets like YouTube to continue to allow dissenting views. Also, I believe that Twitter is probably going to do something like partner with Rumble, or Twitter will start its own video service. That's what I think. Anyway, so go check out the documentary if you want. It's called Died Suddenly. You can make your own conclusions. But the thing that's amazing about that documentary is, I'm not talking about the actual content. The paradigm of that documentary is the fact that within like 22 hours, it had 3 million views just on Rumble. That's not including the various other places I have found it on YouTube, where it's just been re-uploaded and it's got 100,000 there, 100,000 here. Plenty of people have been sharing it on places like BitChute and other alternative video platforms. I'm sure people have been watching clips and sending clips on places like Telegram. I'm sure people have been sharing clips on places like Twitter. It's probably got, at this point, I would say between all the platforms, I would say it's probably got like 10 million views. That's insane. And the reason is, at the height of the biggest sitcoms of all time, like Friends and so forth, those shows on their like season finales would have something like 10 million views, and they were broadcast into every television station in North America. So for something that's on an alternative video platform that's heavily censored on other platforms, to get something like 10 million views at this point within 36 to 48 hours is remarkable. And it's more the phenomena itself that I find interesting in the documentary. Personally, I did have to watch a documentary. There were some claims that were definitely true. A lot of it, I think, was a stretch, and a lot of it was... There wasn't a lot of journalistic integrity into many of the claims, although what it did present, a lot of it was shocking and true. That's as far as I'll say. But why is it? Why is it that something like that is sort of a complete and utter viral phenomenon? Why is it that something like that, because I'm going to be honest, the actual documentary itself is pretty blasé, as far as it's just really shocking. I mean, it kind of harps on this one idea and presents it over and over and over and over and over again. Why would 10 million people show up to watch that? What is it about that? It's not about the actual medication. It's about the moral implications of what the thing represents. That's my opinion. In scripture, we're told, fear not him who can kill the body, but instead fear him who can kill the soul. And the meaning behind that is, there are definitely bodily deaths that we go through. There are definitely bodily harms. There are definitely bodily ailments, and those things are bad. But ultimately, the most vile thing that can happen to a human being is someone who can kill your soul. And how does somebody kill your soul? Well, by basically putting you into mortal sin, or encouraging you to get into mortal sin, because that's how your soul dies. So no one kills your soul in the sense of they directly kill it, but they contribute to the death of your soul based on temptation. So I'm going to bring up here in the scriptures where it talks about the mark of the beast, because this is the idea of the mark of the beast is something that came up a lot when this whole phenomena has been happening. And if we read here, we see this is in the Apocalypse chapter 13. It says, and he shall make all, both little and great, rich and poor, free men and bondmen, to have a character in their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, but he that hath character, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Now, there's a lot more to this. There's a lot more to interpreting Apocalypse than just the letter of it. I recommend everyone go check out Taylor Marshall's book, Antichrist and Apocalypse. I actually did the narration for the audio version. Not just tooting my own horn, but it's actually pretty good. It's a great book, but I also think we did a good job with the audio. People have received it pretty well. So, do I believe that what has happened in the last 18 months, roughly, is the mark of the beast? I do not. There are many things that when you read Marshall's book and look into the church fathers on the Apocalypse, there are many things that have to come to pass that have not come to pass in order for us to be in the, quote unquote end times, or to have any assurity at all. It is not clear that what happened with this thing for the last 18 months even fits that description perfectly. It says in your right hand or on your forehead. Well, that's not where you receive a vaccine. You don't receive it on your right hand or in your forehead. So obviously that can't be a one-to-one correlation sort of thing. However, The major similarity is where, if we go back to it, it says, and no man might buy or sell, but he that hath the character. And that is the thing that has had people really getting up in arms the last 18 months about the moral implications of what has happened. Because it's just a fact. If you didn't partake in this procedure, if you didn't partake in this social experiment, and I mean that in the technical term, the social experiment, we've never seen anything like this before on a global scale. We've never seen such a level of international groupthink with one singular cause in mind. I really think if we look at all of human history, I don't think that we have seen this level of international frenzy. World War II, there was a lot, but many nations in the world were not affected at all by World War II, and it didn't really do anything to their countries. Yeah, people get whipped up about elections and so forth. Sure, people like to watch American movies, and that's pretty big reach, but nothing to this degree. I mean, you had full communist nations like China, non-communist nations like the United States, developing nations, developed nations, nations of different languages, nations of different ethnicities. Almost, I would say probably 70 to 80% of the countries in the world fell in line and basically did the same thing. Many did not, relatively speaking. Many African countries did not. That's true. Some Latin American countries didn't. And then obviously there was Sweden and other countries that kind of were softer on it. America was very mixed. But a real huge portion of the world's population bought into this thing hook, line, and sinker without any critical thinking, without any second opinion, without any discernment of what was actually happening. And many people who were resistant to it ultimately gave in to the paradigm based on social pressure. And that social pressure manifested in you could not buy or sell unless you had the mark, metaphorically speaking. Again, I don't think it is the actual mark of the beast, but I get the analogy. Many people did what they had to do, what they believed they had to do, because they wanted to keep their jobs, because they wanted to travel, because they wanted to be able to go to sporting events, because they wanted to be able to get a certain job, because they wanted to be able to go to restaurants, play sports. I mean, here where I live in Ontario, if you didn't get the mark, so to speak, you had less civil rights for a period of about 6 months than a African American gentleman would have had in the Jim Crow South. And I mean that. Think about that just for a sec. In places where they've had apartheid and segregation, I'm not equating the two. I'm not saying that people in Ontario who didn't participate in the program suffered as much. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just saying, objectively speaking, it wasn't as if they allowed you to have an unvaccinated hockey league and a vaccinated one. It wasn't as if they had let you have unvaccinated water fountains and vaccinated water fountains. You just simply weren't allowed to enter the building where they had hockey or water fountains at all if you didn't partake in the mark. It wasn't as if they said you can have a vaccine-free restaurant and a vaccinated restaurant, to use the segregation. No, you couldn't go to any restaurants at all. It wasn't as if they had colleges for one group and colleges for the other. Nope, just no college for you. It was complete. It was a complete segregation. And most people didn't intentionally support the program. That's true when you talk to most people. But the vast majority of people complied or kept their mouths shut. And why is that? Because they gave in. Because the pressure was so great. Because you could neither buy nor sell. And now we are seeing, because here's the thing. Every single thing on earth has side effects. Some people eat oranges and have some sort of reaction to vitamin C. It's a real thing. You can look it up. There are side effects that come from too much vitamin C that cause people to go to the hospital, in some rare cases. Some people can't eat peanuts. There's nothing on earth. There's nothing on earth that is 100% safe in all cases. But you weren't even allowed to even consider the possibility. You weren't even allowed to consider the possibility with this thing that it could be as dangerous as other types of the same thing. That's the crazy part. If you brought up in mixed company that maybe this thing might not be the safest thing that's ever existed in the history of mankind, you were immediately pegged as somebody who existed in a paradigm where you were completely against the mark, where you weren't with the program, where you didn't want to protect others, where you didn't respect other people's freedom to not get sick. It was insane, the logic people used. People segregated their family members. I was segregated by various members of my immediate family that I don't know if I'll ever talk to again, because the damage has been done over the stupidest thing you could ever imagine. But these people, they just bought into it. They bought into it as if their salvation depended on it. They bought into it, in a sense, like a religious person who was under the spell of an antichrist. This is, if you take a minute now soberly and you try to consider to yourself what exactly has taken place, the depths that people descended to, the extent that they were willing to go to, the relationships that they were willing to cut out of their lives, the milestones they were willing to miss, the children they were willing to not see, the businesses they were willing to see closed, the futures they were willing to see ruined, the people they were willing to see be violated. If you were to think about all of those things, people just willingly dove into it and were active, supportive, cheerleading participants of a reality that, let's be honest, looks a lot more like the mark of the beast than it doesn't. You know, when all is said and done, and if we live to see the end times, whatever, and, you know, let's just say in some hypothetical scenario, we live past, you know, this is the new heaven, the new earth, and we kind of go to the library, and we're looking in the section of the library where you find books that seem like they're talking about histories that relate to the end times. What we went through in the last 18 months is going to be a lot closer to that end time section than it's not. You know, we're going to have to go to the same wing of the library to find the history of 2020, 2021, 22. And we're going to be finding a lot of similarities. Just like when we look at our governments. No, our governments did not go full Soviet communist. But if we compare, you know, the glory days of Europe and North America and so forth, whatever those may be, you know, this is a relative statement. When you're going to the library to look up the history of what we went through the last 2 years, it's going to be much closer to that section that talks about Stalin, Hitler, and Mao than it is going to be to that section that talks about, you know, insert your great president or king or whoever treated the people well. We did live through something like we have lived through, and we are, in a sense, living through something like a precursor or a prefigurement of the end times. Yeah. And no, it was not the end times. We're still here. It wasn't the mark, because again, it doesn't really even fit the description fully. But people were not wrong to make those comparisons, at least in a sense of an abstract sense. And I think ultimately, this is why people have been so enamored and switched on about this documentary. I don't think it has as much to do about the health stuff as it does everything else. I don't think it does. If it was just about the science in the documentary, a lot of people wouldn't watch it because a lot of it's pretty shoddy journalism. but it's more about the fact that they present a narrative as to why this sort of thing happened. And I think people really want to know. So I'm always trying to be positive as much as I can. And I think at this time, we have to look at this collective energy that people have put into trying to be awakened. People talk about being, wake up to what's going on. If you've lived through this time, you have to realize that it's not a political awakening that is the necessary prerequisite. It's a spiritual awakening, and not just general spiritualism, all religions are the same. But it really is evident after these last couple of years that it's Christ or chaos. A society that has completely thrown off its morals, that has, look at the fact that the first things to close were churches. It was evident that our society doesn't care at all about Christianity, and that Christianity is actually seen as non-essential. It was made clear as day. This is a society that is in a position where the people in general are willing to accept the Antichrist as their savior. That's what will happen in the end times. And we're seeing a population that is like that now. If you look more into the book of the Apocalypse, it talks about the type of man the Antichrist would be, that even the elect would be deceived. What does that mean? How many churchmen were deceived? The Pope himself has been an agent of this antichristic mentality. The elect have been deceived. Only a small number of people were able to hold out. Really, it was a remnant. And most people went along and willingly accepted the mark. And then throw into the fact that there's a lot of plague analogies and things like that in the book of Apocalypse, and you could keep going with the similarities. So to close here, first of all, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and click the links in the description. I always forget to do that. It's a good reminder that we will all die suddenly. The moment that you die, you will die suddenly. You will be alive one moment, and then the next moment you won't be. Every single person on earth, in a sense, will die suddenly, which means every single person on earth will face their personal end times, where you will face your personal judgment. Yes, there'll be a resurrection of the dead at the end of time and so forth, but if you don't make it on this round, you're just going to be woken up later on to, relive that punishment again, in a sense. So, maybe one of the reasons why people are so worried about sudden death as well is because they know in their hearts that if they die in a certain way, that sudden death is going to lead to eternal hellfire. There's a lot that can be unpacked from this phenomenon. And I hope that it serves as a positive for people to get their spiritual lives in order and to recognize the depth of depravity that an anti-Christic society descends into. Our society is anti-Christ. It's against Christ. That's just a fact. I personally know from dealing with the government as a Catholic school teacher that the government is against Catholicism. I know this as a fact. I was told by the Ontario College of Teachers that Catholic beliefs are harmful. I was told this. The government of many places is against Catholicism. It is against Jesus Christ. If you argue in the secular world that you should have certain rights because the Bible requires them of you, that's not a valid argument, because Christ is against what the culture wants, because the culture is against Christ. To be against something is to be anti-something. The culture is anti-Christ. This is just a fact. So it shouldn't shock us when something like the mark of the beast or a prefigurement shows up. And this should remind us that we will all die suddenly. And when we do, we are going to die in the direction that we're leaning. If we're leaning towards hell, we're going to fall there for all eternity. And if we're leaning towards heaven, by the grace of God, we'll be saved. So don't get, try not to get caught up in the specifics of this whole documentary of Died Suddenly about the potential physical things. Because again, we fear not him who can kill the body, but him who can kill the soul. This is what God himself tells us. And although the things that are presented in that documentary are scary, and many of them are true, I believe, although much of the documentary I think is questionable. If you come away from this phenomena worrying most about your physical health and not your spiritual health, you will have missed the point. And by God's grace, he gave us this moment of this prefigurement of the end times, this prefigurement of the mark of the beast, so that we could get our spiritual acts together. So if we don't do it, then when the real one comes along, we don't have any excuse. Anyway, like this video, subscribe to this channel, click the links in the description. Thank you to everyone who's supported. By the way, after you go to visit Noble Gold to get your retirement in order, you can find links to my book, Terror of Demons, Reclaiming Traditional Catholic Masculinity. If you want to be the type of man who will be able to withstand the coming of the Antichrist, then you need to have, well, this isn't in focus there. There you go. Is that in focus? Boom. Then you need to have the ability to withstand the wiles of the devil, which means you cannot be an effeminate man. You need to be a man of virtue. To be a man of virtue, you can find this book. It's from Tam Books. Link in the description. Boom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Kennedy Report. Until next time, God bless.